3 o'clock on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome aboard the Postgame Show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. It is Masters Week, and the tournament is upon us a couple of hours late. We've got a couple of interesting names at the top of the leaderboard right now, but some of the guys have not even teed off. I don't know that the final tee times will get to finish their round. Maybe. We'll see. I think it's going to be close, and they'll be playing a few holes in the morning. So we'll check in on all of those things. Coach Bill McDonald is in the house, ready to help us out as he does every year for this and many other of our biggest golf events. And his buddy and Georgia Tech teammate, Trip Eisenhower. There you go. Trip Eisenhower of the Golf Channel is going to be with us.
Yeah, college roommate. Been my best friend for, I guess, gosh, it's hard to.
That long.
That long. Yeah.
The whole time.
But obviously does a great job with the Golf Channel, and he had some time to join us today, so that'll be good.
Well, it's very good. And you very politely asked me this morning, like, hey, by the way, and I knew you knew him, and I was like, heck yeah. The thing is, now that he's going to do it, I'm going to bug him all the time.
Well, see, I've been faking this now for about 15 years with you. I think you need to get a real expert.
Well, I do have some things I want to ask him beyond. I mean, I'm going to ask you a lot, as we do all the time, about the course, the players, and some of the things with golf. And obviously, he's an expert on it too. But there are a few business things with golf going on right now, and one of them isn't just like Live versus PGA or anything like that, but like the official world golf ranking and what's happening with that this week, and also things. And I will ask you this too about like I have it on my notes here, the rollback measures. For some of you have heard this, some of you have not, but professional golf is likely to see a new ball introduced that will not travel as far.
Right.
And Mr. Ridley, the chairman of Augusta National, said, we don't want to see our course get to 8,000 yards.
Yeah.
But I looked at it, and they've added, in the last 30 years, they've added more than 700 yards to Augusta National. Think about that for a minute, y'all. It's now more than a 4-mile walk. And it ain't just a walk.
Right. Yeah, it's a hike.
It's a hike. That's fair. But we'll touch on all of those things for you. The latest on what's going on around the Kentucky search coming up. Our good friend Eric Kimry is going to be with us. Always fun to talk with Coach Kimry. I got 2 coaches on the show today. How lucky are we? Coach is going to talk with us about his thoughts from afar these days, obviously, but keeping a keen eye on Gamecock football. And Eric will be at Augusta National later in the week, and he, like me, like Bill, like many of you listening, rabid Masters fans, if not just golf fans. Some people are just like Masters fans, and I get it. I'm a golf fan. I text Bill all the time. I'll be watching the Shell Open. Well, they don't call it that anymore, but I'll text you about some guy doing something. I like golf a lot, so I'm into it. But Eric will be with us in a bit. Speaking of Gamecock football, they had an open to the media scrimmage today. We'll get you some reports. Well, not scrimmage, I guess, open practice. Maybe a few scrimmage moments.
Some scrimmaging going on.
And they will, of course, the spring game is in 9 days. There's only a few practices left. The spring game, I always remind people, does count as the 15th available practice day to college programs. Still here for a real game, tell you that much. This weekend, by the way, I think the Ohio State spring game is on Big Fox.
That's right. It's like the first one to be on Big Fox, right?
I think it's opposite the Masters, so good luck with that. But the Ohio State people will be watching.
Oh, they'll watch anything. They'll watch it, no matter when it's on the calendar.
Yeah. And I did see that Colorado's game was going to be on Fox. It was going to be on ESPN. And then Dion decided to have it the weekend of the draft. And ESPN said, oh, well, sorry. So now it's going to be on, wait for it, the Pac-12 network.
Ooh. Wait, that still exists?
I guess till the end of the school year it has to, because they have, like, events.
Well, they don't even have broadcasters for some of their baseball games. I don't know if you guys have seen that recently, but I saw somebody,
just turn it on and watch, man. It's fun.
On
like
Twitter where they're trying to watch Arizona UCLA, and there were no broadcasters. They just watched a video stream of the game with some natural sound, and it sounded like a really weird experience.
Okay, so on that note, now you were not born. He's much younger than you and me, unfortunatately. You may remember
Fortunately
this.
for me.
Yes. You may remember this. I know I do. In the 80s, I forget exactly when, I'm watching an NFL day. I'm a kid.
Yeah, I know what you're talking.
Jets and Dolphins comes on, and there's no sound. And like and this is way back in the day, right? So there's no way to like go to Twitter and go, what the heck is going on with the Jets-Dolphins game? And later we found out that NBC was just trying it out. Yeah. They just wanted to see what would happen if they put on an entire NFL game with no announcing crew. Just the same camera shots that you would see, the same graphics that you would see. But there was no play-by-play and no color analyst. It was simply a game. People didn't like it. They never did it again. But I do remember that. I do remember that. I want to say 83, 84 maybe.
I remember it.
And it was, then there was a piece about it in Sports Illustrated the next week and stuff, you know. But it made news.
I'm sure the Pac-12 network would like to fall back on something like, oh, we just wanted to try it and see what's going on.
We just wanted to see.
Not that like we're folding or anything and we can't send broadcasters out there.
Before we talk a lot of golf with Coach, again, we'll get you the latest on what's going on with the Kentucky search. If you have not yet heard Scott Drew, who was, by all accounts, you know, look, here's the thing. No AD is going to ever tell you that they offered the job to anyone other than the person that took the job. But by all accounts, Scott Drew was offered the job. It's one of those, hey, if we were to offer you X, Y, and Z in terms, would you be interested in the job? And if they say yes, then they'll go, okay. It's kind of like playing Clue. You know, you can make a suggestion, right? And then if nobody goes, or if you go around the board with Clue and nobody can like hold up their little card to show you, like they have Professor Plum or they have the lead pipe, and you're like, all right, now I'm going to accuse you of it. It's sort of the same principle.
You can't offer unless you have the received interest after asking a few fancy worded questions.
So I clearly, like, Scott Drew held up a card that said, you know, ballroom. And so,
all right, and like yesterday, Waco Tex-Mex restaurant.
Yeah, right. That's basically it. And so Mitch Barnhart at that time realizes, okay, well, it's not Scott Drew. So who do I turn to next to accuse? Or, sorry, offer.
Question,
yes. But Scott Drew is not going to take it. I just was telling Terry, I've seen some refrain from a couple. Just again, it's Twitter people. I get it, and it's fans. But something along the lines of, imagine allowing your family to keep you from getting your dream job. That was some refrain of that from a few people, and I'm like, well, how do you? I'm like Terry said, how do you know it was a dream job? And like, oh, by the way, we've been in Waco now 22 years or whatever, and I make a lot of money, and they like me here. And I don't have to deal with a bunch of nut jobs that don't like me or won't ever like me.
That are ready to fire you if you somehow lose to Missouri.
Yeah, you know, I mean, one bad thing. So it won't be Scott Drew. There are reports from Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio, who is dialed in. He says he's hearing that Mitch Barnhart and the Boosters may put together an offer for Dan Hurley that exceeds $10 million per. I don't know where Connecticut's line is. I think that Connecticut can pay a lot of money. It's a big school. They love their basketball. Again, Connecticut, I get what Kentucky's saying about Kentucky basketball. I get their fan base. Mm-hmm. But you and I were talking this morning, and Coach, you know this. Connecticut has won 6 men's basketball titles in the last 25 full seasons played.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
That dwarfs anybody else in that time span.
Kentucky in the last 50 years has won 4. So I'm not. That doesn't mean Kentucky isn't a great program, because it is. Again, we talk about their support. We've seen it. Again, we're in an SEC city. We see their support every year, every other year these days, but we see it a lot. Again, I'm going to say it. Bruce Pearl is your guy. That's my opinion. I know it's an opinion shared by others. If I'm Billy Donovan, while I might be intrigued, I feel like maybe that ship has sailed. And again, Billy Donovan is coaching a team that is going into at least some form of the NBA's postseason.
A play-in.
Yeah, better than not being in that, I suppose. And like I said, you get the Hawks. Sorry, Bill. You're not a Hawks fan, are you?
I mean,
You're yeah, see, no, done.
No.
There are dozens of Hawks fans. If Bill was a Hawks fan, he would break, I guess, some type of statistical rule that like there can't be too many Hawks fans in one area because there's just a dozen of them.
Well, Bill grew up in Georgia, but I mean, even Georgians don't really.
Hubie Brown did teach me how to cuss.
Oh, that's cool.
I will say that. My dad used to get us tickets when I was a kid to the Hawks games in the 70s. We had like Tree Rollins and John
Charlie
Drew,
Chris, John Drew,
Fast Eddie Johnson.
Yeah, man.
Skip Carey.
I used to skip
remember
and
he
Pete.
called some basketball.
Yeah, Skip and Pete. Yeah, absolutely.
But I was a fan back then, but I haven't really. I mean, that's a whole nother. I don't really. The NBA is not really my
I think
thing.
you should put that on your resume. Taught to cuss by Hubie Brown. That's
Hubie Brown taught a lot of people a lot of things. And his influence is
I
widespread.
bet he could let him fly.
He could teach that very well.
I bet he could back in the day. But anyway, if I'm Billy Donovan, again, I'm urging the Chicago Bulls to get me a couple of players in the offseason because I can coach ball. But Bruce Pearl just checks every box, in my opinion. And you don't need this thing to go too much farther. I threw it out today. I feel like you're being rejected by a lot of people. Perhaps you're not technically being rejected by, say, Jay Wright, who's just not interested in your job, but had to put something out. Maybe you weren't technically rejected by Nate Oates because Mitch Barnhart isn't stupid and knows that Nate now has an $18 million buyout. But Nate Oates was forced, sort of, to put out a statement. I'm not leaving Alabama. Now, mainly because Nate is in the middle of recruiting the portal and the high school kids. You don't need this.
You need to squash whatever rumors are.
Right after you sign the deal. You and I joked yesterday, man, if there was really some kind of ultimatum on Scott Drew over a 24-hour period, like I need to know within 24 hours. Again, you give Bruce Pearl 24 minutes, and it might only take 24 seconds.
Steven would already be in Lexington.
Yeah.
Before he gives the answer in 24
He may already
seconds.
be there. So, anyway, we'll keep you updated on what's going on with the Kentucky basketball search. Mark Kingston spoke last night about some of the troubles around the baseball program. There's good, there's bad. There's 6-6. We've talked about that in conference play. They go to Florida, who's also, as we talked about yesterday, scuffling a little bit. So we'll get into all those things throughout the course of the afternoon. But Coach Bill McDonald, kind enough to be with us here. How big a day? Like there's Christmas, birthday, anniversary, Masters Thursday.
Ooh.
Right there with it.
It's my favorite, one of my favorite weeks of the year, if not my favorite. Just love the tournament. To me, it's the greatest spectacle in professional golf, in golf. Period. I think I love the Open Championship and all that goes with it. All the majors are great, but the Masters is just different to me.
It's different, no doubt. We'll talk a lot about it here for you. And again, Bill's good friend, Golf Channel analyst Tripp Eisenhower is going to join us coming up at the bottom of the hour. So look forward to talking to a couple of big-time golf experts about this. 803-404-6100 to be a part of it on the phone line or the text line. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell. It's the Thursday postgame show. Welcome back into the Postgame Show on this Thursday afternoon. Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell with you. The Masters is underway just an hour west of us in Augusta. Coach Bill McDonald is making his, I'll just call it annual visit. I don't know how many this is now. A lot. What do you think? Like 12, 15?
Gosh, it's
Well, you've been head coach now.
I'm on my
18 years.
18th year. Mm-hmm.
We've been on the air 17 years this year. I feel like you've been part of what we do virtually that whole time. But let's say 15. But that feels like it might not be enough. But we'll say 15 because it's been a long, long time. All right, we talked about the excitement around this. People know what the Masters means. In fact, my wife and I were driving last night, and we were here right on Gervais Street, and we saw 4 guys walking from the Garden Inn, and they were headed towards the Vista. And I looked at her. I said, "They're here for the Masters." And she goes, "How do you know?" And I was like, "Come on, look at those guys."
Yeah.
You could they were all in golf shirts, and they all had like a stride of like, we're ready to go get a beer. And I was like, "They're here for the Masters."
Yeah, yeah.
They're not here for anything else. If they were here for business, they wouldn't be in golf shirts and shorts. They'd be in something else. They were here for the Masters. But the delayed start, let me ask you from a coaching and playing perspective first real quick here. Everything's about routine. Mm-hmm. How much, if at all, do you think this affects the majority of these guys?
Well, most all these guys nowadays, I mean, the apps are so good with the forecasts and the things like that. I mean, they're not only prepared for, well, by the way, they got pretty lucky. They didn't get as bad a weather as they could have, so that's helped. And I think they set the golf course up relatively easy in that respect to they didn't want to embarrass the guys if they got some crazy winds today. So I think if you have one of the earlier tee times today, you're really benefiting from that. The golf course should dry out as it gets windier, and the forecast next few days looks dry and windy actually. But they're professionals. They understand their lapses and things of what, that's an outdoor sport, so there are going to be some crazy things happen. But I think the tough thing might be for some of the newer players who basically practiced on a golf course for 3 days that was firm and fast,
right? And
then the change in the course through the weather over the night could really affect some guys.
Now you've told us a lot, through the years that the greens have the system underneath to dry out,
sub-air system.
Yeah, the sub-air,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously the fairways and the surrounding areas do not. Mm-hmm. And I was watching earlier today, and there was a bunch of times when people maybe were shooting over a green, like, well, at least it's dry. So clearly
Mm-hmm.
there are some little, my word here, little boggy points where it could get that way. But by and large, and scores are pretty good. I mean, right now, the leader's at 5. DeChambeau's at 4. Danny Willett's been up and down a little bit a couple times. John Rahm, who's the reigning champion, is at 2 under through 8 already, so he's playing well. He's the only live guy I'll cheer for this week, by the way.
Yeah.
Although it was fun to watch Bubba's little girl yesterday.
Right.
But
yeah.
That was kind of cool. Let's talk about Tiger real quick here, and because I don't want to bury the lead on somebody like that. He's still hurt.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. Mm-hmm. He's also still immensely popular. There's no doubt about that. As you assess what you know of him right now, and I know you're not a doctor, but I'll call you an expert at least. We talked already about the elevation, the walk, the hike that is Augusta National Golf Course. How hard is this going to be for him? What do you see as the number one thing that's going to hinder him?
One of the frustrating things for me, just on a personal level, is I haven't had a chance to get down there this year. We adjusted our schedule, played in a different event in Missouri this year. Normally I'm down there for the practice round on Monday.
Well, then they canceled your flight.
yeah, then that happened. But it's been pretty cool the last few years to be around him on Monday, or to be within where you could basically make a personal assessment of how someone's walking.
Yeah.
And watch them for an entire hole or two. What I noticed, not only in the last year or so, is that he has more difficulty when he's getting in and out of bunkers, awkward angles, which is understandable. So
do I.
Yeah, we all do. It puts more pressure on his ball striking. In other words, it's hard enough to handle that place for the amount of practice rounds and the 4 rounds if he makes the cut. As it is with his given uncertainties with his leg, but the better he hits it, the better he has a chance of not stressing his leg too much. If he starts hitting it all over the place, and he has the back issue as well. So obviously, I told somebody in the airport yesterday, as a matter of fact, when we were coming back in Chicago, I ran into a guy that was coming down here he said, "What do you think of Tiger?" And I said, "I don't think he would even play in the event if he didn't think he could win."
Yeah.
I think in his mind, he's still there mentally.
Hey, that's something you and Elijah have in common. You've both been at O'Hare recently, so there's.
That's right. I spent about 7 hours there. I got a good lay of the land there. So
right.
For a big airport, I got to check out a lot of it. But Bill, I'm a golf casual. A lot of golf casuals that are going to be tuning into the Masters because it's obviously the biggest event, at least, here in America when it comes to golf. And one thing that maybe not a lot of people that are casuals of the game understand, I guess, maybe the course challenges at Augusta. We all know it's beautiful. It is one of the most aesthetically pleasing things in all of sport. But what makes it challenging as a course, compared to maybe other courses that we might be familiar with?
Well, it's what you would call a parkland golf course, which is inland. And what's really unique about it, what Bobby Jones wanted to do with Alistair McKenzie, is he didn't want any rough. And he wanted it to play more like a links-style golf course, but being parkland and inland, there's some challenges there. And given the fact that the Berkman's property that they bought, being a nursery, had a lot of hills, I think the biggest thing, people always say two things about Augusta the first time they visit there. One is they can't believe how green everything is. And secondly, they can't believe how hilly it is. Maybe the third thing is the price of concessions is pretty reasonable.
I said how it was like church. So
Yeah.
my two things were it's like church because it's so quiet, other than when somebody does something good, and the elevation.
Yeah. The challenging aspect to it is it's so much of a second shot golf course in that your approaches into the green really dictate that, like, you could have a 10-footer right below the hole, right up a hill, and that's obviously preferable. You could be just a few feet right or left, and that putt's breaking 3 or 4 feet. The greens are just diabolical in some places, and that's where I think they did a great job today. Not the pin placements I've seen, some of the holes I've seen played on the app look to me to be everything looks very reasonable. And the wind's out of the south today, which to me, if you're familiar with the property, it's going to be on your back at your back on number one. And I think the golf course sets up pretty well for that wind, or plays easier with that wind. One of the things you're gonna really see this week, and as the weekend progresses, is you have gusts in the 30s down there predicted, and that's where that place is nuts and so tricky for those guys, is like especially on 12. Where you'd prefer a straight line 20-mile-an-hour wind that you know where it's coming from versus throwing up some grass and 1 minute it's on your back and the next it's in your face and then it's from the right, because it can swirl in that corner at Amen Corner. So if they get gusts and swirls, it could be a really interesting and exciting weekend.
Who was somebody that there's no such thing as a bad 3 on 12? I forget who.
Oh, gosh.
Is it Tom Watson? I can't remember, one of those guys from back in the day. Yeah. Which I believe.
Uh-huh.
Although Jose Maria today probably thinks he had a bad 3 because he left a birdie putt about half an inch short. And it wasn't that long. He nailed one. He nailed his tee off of that one. Before we talk to Tripp, Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy are the betting favorites. Mm-hmm. So, Scotty, Rory, or the field for Bill McDonald?
My pick beginning of the week was Scheffler. A lot of people are picking Scheffler. Sentimentally, I'm really pulling for Rory.
Yeah,
I want this for him so badly.
10th try to get his 4th.
Seems like a Ricky Fowler too.
He's back.
That's those guys.
But he won the par 3, so he's not going to win.
He's screwed down. I think this Akshay Bhatia. What he did last weekend was incredible. And I watched him grow up in North Carolina. What a talent he is. And so Victor Hovland.
Uh-huh.
I don't think, for whatever reason, I just don't have good vibes for Rahm. But I'm not like this LIV thing. I get, but it's like so hard to pick an LIV guy because you don't know really what they're playing and how they're doing. And Brooks proved last year. DeChambeau's playing well. I mean, they've proven they're good at DeChambeau's 500 now. Wow. Yeah. So these guys that got out early, this is a huge advantage for them. They're finishing up their rounds, and it's going to start getting windy and drying out.
We'll talk a lot more about what's going on in Augusta. Coach Bill McDonald here with us. Come back on the other side of the break. We'll also be joined by Bill's good friend Trip Eisenhower, longtime analyst at the Golf Channel, as the postgame show continues. Talking the Masters on this Thursday. It is fully underway at the Augusta National Golf Club, about an hour west of us on I-20. And to those of you who are hanging in Columbia, maybe on the way back today or whatever, hey, good to have you. Appreciate you staying in, helping the local economy.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, we do. I'll make beer and food recommendations later on.
That's basically the whole history of the show.
Sure.
Beer and food recommendations.
If you're new to it, we do a lot about beer and food. In fact, I do want to, later on, I will read John Rahm's Champions Dinner menu. It's quite extraordinary. And
A lot of beer and food.
a lot of food. I don't know, probably some nice Spanish wine, maybe some Tempranillos or some such. I don't know what they can get some good wine at Augusta. I'm gonna go out on a limb on that one.
He makes enough money to get some really, really good stuff.
I don't think he has to pay for it.
Yeah, they do.
Does the champion pay for it?
They pay for it, yeah.
Oh, I figured the club just
That's
say whatever
the
you
tradition,
want.
yeah.
Well, the champion gets $3 million, so
That's
they
probably
could-
the least they could do.
But it is pretty cool that they're like, hey, you win this thing? It's like a hole-in-one deal, you know, like you make the hole-in-one, you're buying the drinks.
Right.
You win the Masters, you're buying dinner.
I
next
did
year, bud.
not know that's something new. See, this is why Bill is here. I just always figured that the dues paying members of Augusta National fronted the bill for the Champions Dinner.
You know who can flat cook is Trip Eisenhower.
Oh yeah, well let's find out about that then. We're glad to have Trip on the program, a new guest for us here after all of Bill's years. Trip, great to have you. Trip Eisenhower of the Golf Channel and has known Bill McDonald. As Bill said to us a little earlier, Trip, you guys have been tight friends pretty much the whole time. So you got that going for you, which is nice.
I do. Well, thanks for having me on.
You bet.
Beer and food. I thought we were talking sports, but I love beer and food. So let's keep going on
Well,
that.
hey, listen, you just hang around and we'll do it. Or as I told Bill earlier before we got you on, now that we've had you on, we're going to bug you more often than you might like. So do be prepared for that, sir, in the future. I do want to talk to you about something here from a business of golf perspective that I think is interesting this week. Last season, there were 18 Live Tour players. This year, there are 13. That is primarily because of the official World Golf Ranking, which is still sort of a case in limbo, if you will, in terms of how it's going to affect the guys that are on the Live Tour. And then, of course, in addition to that, Trip, is the whole notion of whether or not these things are going to, sort of merge once again into one entity, which we don't know of as of yet. How do you look at that aspect as altering in some way how we look at this year's Masters?
Yeah, the landscape of professional golf has definitely been shaken and put on its head in so many different ways, and the Live aspect of it is not going away, and they're certainly going to be around for as long as we can imagine. And as Yasser has said, I mean, he can hold his breath as long as anyone because he's got the money and he can withstand anything longer than the PGA Tour. And there's going to be a deal. I mean, there just is. How it's going to be structured, where it's going to be. I think the PGA Tour has lost a lot of negotiating points as the time goes on, and I think they will continue to lose, especially if another top 5 player ends up going to Live. So I think it's in the Tour's best interest to get this resolved, and why they still have some strength in negotiations. But not to say that they don't or are never going to have. I'm just saying they're losing points the longer it goes on. And as far as Live goes, the world ranking issue is going to be something for them until they get to 72 holes and until they have more than 48 to 55 guys starting in their field. And you just can't. I mean, that the aspect of the competition, the meritocracy of golf and all that. I think that's one of the things that's hurt Live on its side is the fact that, they are only playing 54 holes. Are there some very, very good players there? Yes, there are. But again, I think on their side of it down the road, there could be some acquiescence to, we're going to have to play more than 54 holes. And John Rahm has said that recently. Yeah. He said it this last week. He said, this 54-hole thing is hurting us, and we need to take a look at that. And he's got a pretty big, microphone over there on the Live side.
Yeah, Tripp, you mentioned John Rahm. We talked earlier about some of the betting favorites in the Masters, especially with maybe Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler. But maybe who are some dark horses that maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now that you think, given the course and the conditions, could maybe surprise some people and hang around near the top and possibly win this thing?
Well, with the conditions, it's certainly, you would think, going to be favoring more of the scrambling type player, which, of course, people say, well, the Scotty Scheffler hits it so good. People don't understand that he actually is one of the best pitchers and chippers on the PGA Tour, too. But a dark horse, that I'm going to call is probably Cameron Smith. I think early on he looks very, very good, and he's a guy who you would think on this golf course, the way he putts and chips and the way he plays his wedges, he could be very, very dangerous. And I think he's someone that not on a lot of people's radar, although he is battling a bit of a stomach flu, according to the news. So if he can get through that, but quickly he's out 2 under very early on in this first round, and he looks very good with the putter.
Talking to Tripp Eisenhower of the Golf Channel. Coach Bill McDonald's in studio with us here, longtime Gamecock men's golf coach as the Masters is underway. Chip, when you look at a guy, and Bill mentioned Victor Hovland earlier, I also read about Victor, though, he's trying to remake his swing right now. Is that a recipe for concern, success? Is it all that big a deal when a guy of his stature feels like he's not quite there, and then here's the Masters?
Yeah, certainly. But here's the thing: he's remaking his swing to what it was a couple of years ago. So it's not like the Tiger who tried to remake his swing 5 different times into something completely different. He's trying to go back to what he feels like was better. And I will tell you, when I first saw this young man play on the Korn Ferry Tour, I said, this guy is as good as I've ever seen with driving the golf ball. And his iron play was exceptional. So if he's going back to how he was hitting it then, he's going to be just fine. Because now he can chip and pitch. That was what he couldn't do. And, the mid-range putting 5 to 15 feet, he was not very good with that when I saw him on the Korn Ferry Tour. But those parts of his game have become miles better. Part of the reason why he won so much money and won the FedEx Cup last year on the PGA Tour.
Tripp, what do you think about I was mentioning earlier how much of a break I think these guys got that got to play early today, because it looks like they set the golf course up expecting maybe higher winds, worse weather than what they've gotten, and it seems pretty gettable. Should be drying out, and it's obviously pretty gusty, as we know. But someone like DeChambeau's really, with his game, really benefited from playing early, don't you think?
Oh gosh, yeah. And I mean, he is. He's evolved quite a bit from the guy who said he played a par 67 golf course when he was back in the day, and so that he was just going to tear this place apart. And karma had a way of reminding him that Augusta has a way of humbling you at times. But he does not look humble today. And you're exactly right, Bill. I think that looking at the winds right now, they're starting to get up. They're starting to pick up, and they're forecast tomorrow as well. So. Certainly the players that got out early are taking advantage of it, but the ball is bouncing a little bit too. I think the amount of rain that they were expecting, the heavy stuff went south of Augusta. So I think tomorrow you'll see a little tougher setup. I think, to your point, Bill, that they were expecting much tougher winds and the ball being a little, not bouncing quite as much.
Tripp, you're in TV, so you understand limited time. I got about a little under a minute and a half for you. Bill McDonald goes out to Augusta National today. He's shooting, 76?
I hadn't played with Bill in a long time, but he knows his way around Augusta. We got to play there in college, so he knows his way around. He knows the crafty shots. See, that's the thing. With maturity, you get a little shorter, but wisdom. So right. I'd give the over under at 76.
All right.
Yeah.
I feel good about it. I do. Hey, listen, man, appreciate it. I thank Coach for putting this together with you, and I'm serious. I'd love to lean on your expertise here in the future. We got the Heritage course down on Hilton Head next week, and a lot of great golf to come this spring and summer. So let's do it again sometime soon.
You got it. Look, nice meeting you guys.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And
Thanks,
Bill speaks highly, and I know there's a vice versa there. So good stuff. Trip, appreciate you, man. That is Trip Eisenhower of the Golf Channel. Did I sell you short?
No,
74 maybe?
I would take a 76 right now. And
Do you remember what you shot when you played?
The first time I played it, I shot 72. And I don't think I ever broke par there. I've played actually pretty well there, considering. I mean, most of the time I go, I'm shaking like a leaf on the first tee, just almost afraid to take a divot.
72.
But February of 1985.
Nice. We'll talk more about the Masters with Coach and reminisce about that as the postgame show continues. 11 minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Thursday afternoon. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. Bill McDonald is with us as well, the longtime Gamecock men's golf coach. SEC championships are coming up down in Georgia in a couple of weeks. We'll get a quick note on Coach's team and how they're doing. And thanks again to Trip Eisenhower of the Golf Channel for joining us in the last segment. One thing I didn't get to with him that I want to get to with you real quick, we mentioned it at the top of the show today, and that's the rollback measures, as they're calling it. Basically, guys are bigger, stronger, equipment is lighter, balls are made to travel farther through the air, and now pro golf, at least, doesn't want that. So tell us more about what, I mean, do you just make a heavier ball? Or what does this mean, a rollback measure? They want balls to travel, I guess I saw anywhere from 15 to 25 yards less off the tee.
Yeah, more or less from the 30s or 40s to the up to the 90s. You had, I think, the golf ball 5 or 6 yard improvement in terms of the distance. Obviously, the technology improved to where they were more durable and different things like that. But the yardages that they're getting now, it's like 30 yards more in just the last 20 years or 25 years. So that's what they're going after, is that number, trying to get that dial back to where it was in the 90s or early 2000s.
And I realize that a lot of the technology aspects of golf are not necessarily put into place for the professionals. Because golf, that's one of the reasons that golf is so popular. We can all go play. It's just that guys like me don't want to go out and shoot a 110. We'd at least like to shoot a 90.
Right.
We're not going to shoot 68. And that's but that same carryover then applies to these men and women that are fantastic at it. And suddenly, I mean, the difference is that nobody's out going shooting 58s. I mean, you get the occasional great score. But golf courses have managed, at least in tournament play, have managed to either lengthen or, we all know now that Augusta had to add the rough and all that kind of stuff. But I guess it's good for the game to do this.
We're going to I think my personal opinion is that it is going to be good for the game, simply because, and I'm an example of it, my swing speed has decreased so much through just time and getting older that the new technology, I don't swing it fast enough to take advantage of it.
Right.
So you're talking about having to swing the club at 115 miles an hour or faster to really be able to max out with the golf ball today and the shaft technology and what they're doing with everything else. So I think for the average Joe, they're not going to see a lot of difference in this, because they don't get a lot of difference out of the new stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's only really appealing or applying to the really high end amateur max speed type player, and I think I heard Jack Nicklaus talking about it, like he's been trying to get the USGA and RNA to address this since the 70s, and so it's not. I'm at the point where I want to see these measures, to see exactly what they do, and also to Fred Ridley's point. I mean, we don't want the Augusta just to keep buying up chunks of Augusta Country Club next door
he basically said this week in his address that we can maybe go to 8,000, but we really don't want to go past 8,000. And this year it's playing at more than 7,600 yards.
Yeah.
Whereas, again, 30 years ago, it was at 6,800. I mean, they've added so much length. I got an easy solution. Just make every golf course 6,000 yards and we're fine.
Well, you still see a premium on if you have wind, if you have firm, fast greens. Some of these courses, they have some rough. There's still things that make the game. The game's still really, really hard.
Just put bunkers everywhere, Bill.
Yeah, right. It's maybe we need to have some animals attacking players or something to make it more. Instead of
rabid wolverines every fourth hole. You don't know when they're coming out.
From the sport that brought you Tiger Woods brings you real tigers on the golf course.
I mean, there's other things we could do maybe to make the game more difficult.
Now we're getting somewhere. This is what this show is about here. Where we're giving solutions. Solutions. That's what we do here. When we see problems, we offer solutions. Real quick, I know you guys just got back, finished kind of middle of the pack at a place, but I know your top guy is hurt right now, which is very unfortunate this late in the season. But an elbow injury for a golfer spells trouble.
Nathan Franks won the Schenkel and then has a cracked elbow, hairline fracture. So we're hoping to everything. He's ahead of schedule. We're hoping to have him back for the SEC championship. But I also want to give a shout out to Alex Hamilton, who's running the South Carolina Golf Association. Their golf ball is tonight.
Yeah,
USC Alumni Center at 6:30. So
cool.
I'll be over there.
That's always a fun time.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Thank you. And thank you for helping us with Trip. That'll be a lot of fun. Good luck. You got an event this weekend too, right?
Yep. Going to play up in Wofford.
There you go. And then the SEC is coming up real soon. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. That's Bill McDonald. Billy Mack Golf to follow on Twitter. We'll get you updated on what's going on at the Masters, the latest on the Kentucky search, and a lot of Carolina football to talk about with Eric Kimry coming up in the 4. Be right back. Hey, if you're a homeowner looking to make some improvements around the house, maybe get that, you love your house. Maybe the kitchen still feels like it was, done in the 90s because it was done in the 90s, ready to upgrade. Maybe you got a growing family, kids need a playroom, or you need a place to get away from the kids when they're in the playroom. It's time for you to take advantage of Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union's home equity line of credit. Now, this is different than a home equity loan where you get one big lump sum. This line of credit can actually be opened up for 10 years. So maybe it's just starting to, the kids are growing. You get the playroom going, right? Then you upgrade the kitchen. Or then you add on with another bathroom for the kids because they're fighting over the toothpaste and all that kind of stuff. Whatever it is. Palmetto Citizens is ready to help you out. You unlock your home's equity. Again, a 10-year draw can help you and your family grow. My wife and I are customers of Palmetto Citizens. We love them. We use the Millwood branch not too far from our house. You can apply online for anything they do at palmettocitizens.org and achieve your potential. Hour number 2 of the Postgame Show coming at you from the Herndon Chevy Studios in downtown Columbia alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for being with us. And I'm such a fan of Bill McDonald. He has been doing this. He's gracious with his time for the majors. He comes in for other things from time to time. I owe him and Terry the Rochester hot mess plate, whatever it's called, like some Rochester, New York thing. I guess the U.S. Open was up there a couple of years ago. Was it U.S. Open or PGA? Anyway.
I think it's PGA.
I think it was PGA. I can't remember now. It might have been the PGA. Regardless, Rochester, New York is famous for something called like the hot mess. I think that's what it's called, or the hot, I don't know, some kind of mess. Basically, it's just a big.
Sounds like something delicious. Actually,
yeah, it's like fries. It's sort of like American poutine. Poutine is great, but it's like fries and gravy and cheese. This thing is like fries and like hamburger meat or hot dogs and beans and sauce and maybe some slaw or maybe not. And then there's variations and maybe a big mound of cheese, and you just eat it.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And
it sounds like a mess.
Yeah. And some restaurant came up with it. It's probably like, I know there's like the story of how the Cobb salad was invented. It's like, well, I got some ham left over and some eggs left over and some cheese left over. I'll throw it on a salad. Cobb salad. Same kind of thing with this thing. It's like, well, I guess it was one late night thing. Like, well, I got some fries and I got some hot dog chili and I got some beans. And I got some slaw, and I got some cheese, and whatever the heck else you can put on it.
How would a wedge salad have come to be then? Did someone just take a head of
somebody? Yeah,
someone's just like, you know what? I don't want to cut all this up. I'm just going to cut it in half, and then I'm just going to eat it as is.
I don't mind a wedge salad. It's nice. Free shout out to Tombo Grill over on Forest Drive. They've got a nice blue cheese and bacon wedge.
Ooh.
Every once in a while, I'll do that.
That sounds pretty good.
Do that, and then get their big, 20-ounce ribeye.
Oh, 20 ounce. Yeah,
and then waddle out.
That's more like wheelbarrowed out.
Yeah.
That's like you have to sit down in a wheelbarrow and somebody is pushing you out of there.
And if I'm really wanting to waddle out, I'll get the Blondie brownie with the a la mode, the ice cream on top.
Ooh.
But then I might fall asleep on the way home, like as I'm driving, which is dangerous.
Dangerous game.
Yeah, I don't think they want me to do that. Anyway, but yeah, I owe Bill one of those. And technically, again, Terry Ford. I said I'd make one, and I will. That's a fact. I will do it. I think I was supposed to have done it before now.
Are any future declarations considered facts, considering they haven't been done yet? Therefore, it can't be a fact.
That's true. I guess I can't say I will. That's true. It is certainly a goal.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
I think that's more agreeable.
And I think it's a very attainable goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very likely.
The thing is, if I made it, how to keep it hot? Like I almost have to, you have to come to the house. Because if it's like fries and things, like fries, think about fries. I like fries after 20 minutes, man.
When they get colder and soggier, then they're not as appealing. And that goes for almost any French fry, right? There are very few, unless they're insanely crispy to begin with, and you can just throw them back in an air fryer. It crisps them back up a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah, I've done that.
That would have to be, you might have to host an event.
Still not as good.
Hard
but anyway,
to recreate.
thanks to Bill. He's awesome.
Big shout.
I appreciate his time and for, again, hooking us up with the Golf Channel's Trip Eisenhower, who I knew they were friends, but until this morning, I don't know that I quite knew that they were college roommates and teammates and have been buddies that long. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so he could give you good insight on what Bill would shoot if he were to step on Augusta right now.
I've probably asked him before because he's played a lot of the places where a lot of these tournaments are held. He's literally a professional. I know he's a coach, but he is a professional golfer. And he's a member of the PGA. But I don't know that I recall that on his first ever trip to Augusta National, he shot 72.
That's pretty good. I saw you almost spit out your water. No, that number took you by surprise.
I'm thinking a college guy's going to go tell me, I did. I shot 77. because I would take a 5 over. That'd be nice. That's why I was kind of only half joking with like a 76. I mean, look, like 2-time champion Jose Maria Olazabal today, I think is probably going to hit about a 76. So, by the way, Bryson DeChambeau is your leader. He is on 18 at 7 under. Do you want to do your? I don't like to boo as much as you do, but will you do that for me real quick?
Boo.
Thank you. Danny Willett, England's Danny Willett is at 4 under. He is done for the day. Ryan Fox of Australia is at 4 under through 15. Byung-Hun An of Korea, 4 under. He's on the 15th. Victor Hovland is at 4 under as well. Wyndham Clark is at 3, and there's a pretty good group at 2 that includes Cameron Smith and Scotty Scheffler, Tony Finau, Phil Mickelson, Will Zalatoris, amongst a really large group. John Rahm, Shane Lowry, all at 1 under. Clemson's Lucas Glover is at even par. Rory McIlroy is at even par through 9. So that's a little bit of a look. I can't give you the whole thing here, but a Masters tournament is underway. And I know many of you listening will be heading over for at least a portion of the event coming up through the weekend. And then Hilton Head next week should be a lot of fun. And yours truly will be broadcasting from Harbor Town on Wednesday and Thursday. Looking forward to that.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, looking forward to that. It's been a while. I have done shows from there before, but I think the last time, man, gosh, it's probably been about 15 years. It's been a while. So I'm looking forward to it. So I'll be checking in next week. Again, one of the big stories around the Southeastern Conference continues to be Kentucky's search for a basketball coach. If you did not hear earlier today, Coach Scott Drew of Baylor announced that he would not be taking the job, or at least, he's not interested. And maybe he was a little bit interested. As I speak right now, on the men's basketball news page on ESPN.com is a big picture of Bruce Pearl. And he's not taking the job or anything like that yet. But I continue to say Bruce Pearl. I know Sean Miller is creeping in. Mark Pope is creeping in. He's at BYU, played at Kentucky. He's doing well.
Very.
I would not hire one of our own at that job.
It's a tough shadow.
I just
to be
wouldn't do
coaching
it.
under.
I
It's a
wouldn't
different
do it.
type of pressure. But in terms of like if he didn't go there, if he never played at Kentucky,
I might hire him.
Yeah, I could see that. And here's the thing too, like he runs such great modern offense too that it would be so hard. Like that's the type of coach you want to take over Kentucky. And now would Mark Pope recruit very well at Kentucky? Kentucky kind of sells itself, but you've also seen guys like Billy Gillespie come in there and be able to acquire decent talent, but not to the level that you have been bringing in the last few years. So maybe it does make a difference, but I am a huge fan of Mark Pope as a basketball coach, and I think that would be even with the cloud of his alma mater being there and the pressure of Kentucky basketball and having one of your own, so to speak, coach it, I could still see that being something that ends up working well. But it's a tough job, man. It's a very tough job.
Some others that are out there right now. Again, Craig McDermott's name hasn't gone away. The Creighton head coach.
Wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, Shaka Smart's name is on a couple of lists. And I don't know who's, again, any of these searches, I don't know who's making the list. Again, we know that a lot of the national reporters speak with agents. That's why you almost always see a national guy, no matter the job, you'll see a national guy break the story first because they've gotten it from the agent, because the agent wants it to be national. Mm-hmm. I mean, they know the locals will cover it. They know that, guys like Elijah and me or anybody else here or all around, David or Chris or Wes or whomever are going to do it. So I don't know. What I think Mitch Barnhart can't afford is to let this thing drag to where it gives the appearance that a bunch of people are saying no. I mean, I myself threw out a tweet earlier, and I realized not all of these men technically said no to an offer.
An official offer.
Yeah, but a couple of them may have said, "Hey, I'm just don't worry about me." But what I said a little bit earlier was that in the last 5 days, John Calipari, Nate Oates, Dan Hurley, Jay Wright, and Scott Drew have all said they do not want the Kentucky job. which I think is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's not that they said, here's an offer, no.
Right.
But
shut it down before the offer gets to you.
And I said, make of that what you will. And I had a couple people hit me and say, looks like the Alabama search. Or one guy said, I don't make much of it. Yeah, how you feel is how you feel. I'm not here to, again, make of it what you will. I mean that quite literally and quite honestly. I would disagree with the guy who said it was the Alabama search. I think Alabama got who they wanted. I genuinely do. Yes, there may have been some quick contact with Dan Lanning. It was never going to be Steve Sarkisian.
Nope.
And I don't really ever think it was going to be Mike Norvell, to be honest with you.
Nope.
I think Greg Byrne got his guy. I think when he met Kalen DeBoer, I think he was like, oh, I want this guy.
I think the only one they might have been rejected, quote, I'm putting heavy air quotes here, is Dan Lanning.
Dan Lanning.
And here's the thing with Dan Lanning is that Oregon could front the money to make it to where you're never going to want to leave. And you're going to be in a position where you're going to be taken care of for a long time. And it's a school that really cares about football and will give him every resource he needs.
I think I agree with you. And, they're moving to the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I talked about this a bunch. Oregon's really bleeping good, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost twice. They lost twice to the team that played for the national title by a combined 6 points. Now, they're really, really good. I don't know how far off they are from Georgia, which, again, is one of my big sticking points last year about Georgia being dropped all the way to 6th.
Right.
I'm like, come on, man. You'd want to drop them to 3? Okay. 6? Really? But whatever. But Oregon had 2 losses, and I was like, Oregon have been favored over some of these teams. I think Dan realized I got a good thing going. Mm-hmm. I'm going to a better football conference. And as you said, too, I've got resources.
Endless.
And I think, if it had been, again, timing is everything in a lot of these searches, football, basketball, whatever. And some of these, again, like Dan Hurley right now, he's rolling, man.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to leave that. It's not everybody knows Kentucky's a great basketball job. Nobody's going to deny that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you, Connecticut's way better. Like I said earlier, though, they've won 6 championships in the last 25 full basketball seasons.
Well, they might not be because Kentucky pounds the table about being a blue blood, right? Which makes sense because it's one of the more nauseating arguments in all of college sports. What's a blue blood? What's not? And I guess while UConn didn't have any type of success until we started watching these games on color television. I guess that we can say, okay, they're not traditional blue blood, but like Gonzaga, they're a new blood, and they've won 6 national titles since 1999. They are a really, 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 really good basketball school, one of the best programs in the country, and they're coach proof. If you've won titles with 3 different coaches, you're coach proof.
Right.
Kentucky's been that way, but it's been a long time, and you've only won 1 in the last. I don't know. When was that last one? That Tubby Smith one was 98?
98.
So, really only once since 98.
Well, they win in 12?
They won in 12 with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
But, here's the thing. Kentucky's still a great job. And there's a lot of tradition and history there. But the fan base is rabid. And you're going to have to put up with a standard that wouldn't be the standard anywhere else. That's really the tough spot right now. And if you're a coach that has an established culture where you're at, it's going to be hard for you to want to leave and go anywhere else because you're having to rebuild something that is going to be a daunting task because you're going to have to build the roster first year and have to go ahead and have expectations placed upon you that first-year coaches at quite literally any other school will not have.
Yeah, I guess so. We'll keep you updated. Again, I expect movement soon. Again, Mitch Barnhart needs to make the hire because, again, the longer it drags out, it starts to make it look like people don't really, and then a lot of people don't want your job. Again, I'm telling you, Bruce Pearl wants your job.
You're getting really close to Tennessee football 2017.
Yeah, you don't need that. Come back on the other side, get you some sound from Coach Mark Kingston. We spent a lot of time talking about baseball yesterday, the good and the bad, where the team is with a 6-6 conference record as they head to Florida. Coach Kingston on some of those troubles and what he looks to fix as the postgame show continues. Welcome back into the Postgame Show. Unfortunately, our very good friend Eric Kimry is not going to be able to join us this afternoon. He just sent me his apologies. Eric, of course, is the head football coach up at the Baylor School in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but he had some meetings that ran long today and was not going to be available to us, so we're going to work on getting that done tomorrow, if not very soon. I know he was anxious to come on and talk some Gamecock football. Like I say, he may be in Chattanooga now, but the former Gamecock quarterback keeps his eye on what's going on down here, and he's anxious about it. So he wanted, in a good way, good anxious.
His players are oftentimes playing in the SEC. He's got a kid going to play at receiver at Bama next year. Yeah, more than likely.
He's got some talent, man. And in 2 years up there, he has played for the title twice in Tennessee. Won one, lost one. Man can coach.
He can.
He can coach.
He coached that state title game between them and McCallie is probably one of the most highly anticipated high school football games in that region.
A lot of hate between those two schools, too.
Yeah, they don't like each other. They've been playing each other for a long time. They're very old boarding schools, and they do not like each other.
They do not.
And for the first time, they got to play in a state title game against each other. So it was like a Duke, Carolina, North Carolina, Final Four game from.
I'm trying to think locally, Dreer Flora is a pretty good rivalry from back in the day. I guess more recently, maybe like the old Irmo Lexington rivalry.
Ooh.
I don't know if it's quite as heated anymore as it once was. It kind of is with the Battle of the Dam and all that.
And here's the thing too, a lot of states have it to where teams that are in your region or closer to you geographically are on the same side of the bracket.
Right.
Not in Tennessee's private school divisions. Their private school divisions. It's a full-on, you're seeded, I think, 1 through 8.
Well, and Eric let me know, too, so unlike here in South Carolina where he won, obviously, tons of titles at Hammond, in Tennessee, you can make a case that the best football that is played across the state is at the private school level.
Oh, it definitely is, yeah. They recruit really well. Trent Dilfer made a point of that. Yeah. I mean, Trent Dilfer coached at Lipscomb Academy, and that man...
He's at UAB now?
He is. Yeah. He's at UAB and made the jump from there to UAB. And Kevin Mawai took over his first year there. It was last year, former NFL center for the Jets and Titans.
I am going to get you some Kingston sound here in just a second, I promise. George hit us with our conversation about Kentucky basketball on the Firehouse Subs text line. He says, I've not followed this story closely, but I did see Calipari's video announcing he was leaving Kentucky. He said he made a lot of friends there, but he didn't thank the administration or the athletic department or athletic director. I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is, George. And that's kind of classic John Calipari, I suppose. Again, it just kind of ran its course, and you would think you would at least say thank you to, and I think in maybe a roundabout, indirect way, he's trying to just say, hey, this was my dream job, and I loved it here. I'm not going to feel sympathetic toward John Calipari, and let me reiterate something that I said to Elijah yesterday. That this is just my opinion, but I really think John Calipari and some of the highest level guys he recruited lost sight of the fact that fan base wants to win championships. They love the fact that their dudes are playing in the NBA because they always have loved that. I mean, look,
more good players. They get more good players.
Yeah, they do. I mean, how great have they felt through the decades for Pat Riley, right, or something like that, even. Mm-hmm. Who was a good player but became one of the finest coaches to ever walk a sideline. And how many titles does Pat have, right?
He's a coach and executive.
And I could go on and on and on with people, but I won't. But anyway, so you're always proud of your alums, but they want to win titles. They're not here. And I told you yesterday, I was like, look, I'm going to give Kentucky fans two choices. In 10 years, I'm going to give you 5 championships. Hell, I'll give you 3. But I'm just saying in a 10-year period, whatever. 3 championships, 5 championships, or in the same 10-year period, no championships, but 50 dudes that are stars in the NBA, 5 a year that leave. They're taking the championships.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
All of them. All of them.
Or at least getting out of the first bleeping weekend of the NCAA tournament because they haven't done that in the last 4 years.
And in the other 7 years, they'd like to be in the Sweet 16 at bare minimum. Because that's a fair expectation, I think, for that program. Look, again, like I say about Carolina baseball, it's a fair expectation for you to be one of the 16 schools as I morph into some sound from Mark Kingston. But I can equate some of this with what Kentucky folks feel and what Carolina baseball fans feel. It's fair to expect to be a host in the first round of the NCAA tournament at South Carolina baseball. You're not going to every year. There's a lot of reasons why. Could be injuries. Maybe you just have a bad team. Maybe some other people are just better than you. There's a whole host of reasons as to why. When the reasons are those that you can deal with, you work to fix them. When there are reasons that you believe someone else needs to fix, then you do that too. And that's where Kentucky is right now. I think they wanted to get rid of John Calipari, but they couldn't. And so they didn't. Mm-hmm. And then they did because, and again, behind the scenes, what kind of machinations were going on to make this happen? I think a lot.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the thing. Kyle Tucker wrote a piece in The Athletic in the last 24 hours that kind of, goes in depth with the 24 hours leading to Mr. Tyson and John Calipari meeting and the Final Four in Phoenix and talking this out. And there was a lot of belief that John Calipari was kicking himself for not taking the UCLA job in 2019 when Mick Cronin got hired.
Yeah.
Because that UCLA coaching search, we're kind of in a really weird, I guess, recycling of how that one was because Rick Barnes turned it down. A lot of coaches turned it down. John Calipari turned the UCLA job down. And there was a sense of people around Coach Cal that he regretted turning down the UCLA job. And that kind of soured with people that were in the university. Him and Mitch Barnhart's relationship, to our texter's point, he is correct. It has been reportedly diminished over the last few years, especially since the pressure to go further in the NCAA tournament has kept, getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So
the Stoops thing didn't help.
No. At all. And
if you don't know that, Cal was kind of critical of how much he thought Kentucky was spending on football relative to what they needed to spend to continue to upgrade basketball. And he kind of took a couple of backhanded swipes at Mark Stoops. Again, they were backhanded swipes, but swipes nonetheless. And, again, Andy Staples, by the way, continues to say, and I think he's right, Mark Stoops has the best job in college sports. Because you make all the money, you got the recruiting budget, you got the SEC trimmings and trappings, and if you can win 8 games, you're gold.
Oh, you win 9, you get a statue.
Yeah. And so those years he's won 10, but there is no expectation of Mark Stoops winning the Southeastern Conference Championship, much less a national title. Maybe they'd like to make the playoff now that it's expanded every once in a while. Maybe.
And maybe if the basketball team now that Cal's not there, if they take a dip in expectation, which they never should, but imagine the Billy Gillispie years where, you out of the 2 years he was there, he won 20 games in one of them, but wasn't good for an NCAA tournament. If the focus shifts away from basketball and onto football, that might be the worst thing to happen to Mark Stoops.
But, George, the last thing I'll say about it, too, again, I say I don't feel sympathetic for John Calipari. I really do believe that he and some of his top-level recruits lost sight of the winning. I know I said a little bit of that, but it can't all be about auditioning for the NBA. And I think way too many of those kids and their head coach began to look at it like that. I know they want to win because they're competitors, but how many of those guys are bought in? And Terry and I were talking, Terry used to work in Lexington. And again, Elijah, I know you follow this and haven't been in Nashville, which is, there's so many Kentucky people in Nashville. John Calipari seemed to have some type of aversion or allergy to recruiting in-state kids that desperately wanted to play and win for Kentucky, which is why Reed Shepherd was a breath of fresh air this season for UK fans. He's got a pedigree. He's got a lineage. He's an excellent player. He's National Freshman of the Year, but he wants to win for Kentucky. He's not there auditioning for the Bulls and the Knicks and the Kings and the Dubs. He's there to win for the Cats. And they're looking for somebody that wants to do that. And that's why I keep coming back around to a guy like Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl wants to win he'll recruit. But he wants to win, man. And that's why the Yale thing hurt him. And he covered for his guys. They didn't take Yale seriously. And he thinks a lot of that's on him. That was a great team.
That was built. That was a team that was built to beat a team like UConn.
Yeah, they
in terms
were.
of how they defended.
They were. I had them versus Houston in the title game. I realized it all went to hell, but so did everybody's bracket. It felt like, except for Jim Boeheim, who apparently killed it on Dan Patrick's celebrity bracket contest. All right, some sound from Coach Kingston coming up for you as we talk Carolina baseball. You're listening to the Postgame Show. AAA Heating and Air, one of the great, really just great people to work with or to work for. Roy and Dana Finley want you to know that if you are amongst the best of the best in the HVAC industry, but you're kind of feeling a little neglected in your current role in your current company, give them a call. They're ready to help you out and start you on the path to a new career. You could be an hourly rate employee, salaried employee, commissioned employee, a mix of all of those things. Great benefits like 401k with a company match. Great benefits, paid vacation, company vehicle, company phone, company tablet. All these things sound appealing. As you're ready to make a change, then log on to callAAAtoday.com or give them a shout, 803-677-1500, and see if you can become part of a great family and team at AAA Heating and Air. And remember, stay comfortable with them, too. Tell them we sent you to AAA Heating and Air.
From the WIS Traffic Center, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to report to you that are causing some delays on the roadways here in the Midlands. Not a lot today so far. Fingers crossed that we can keep that up, but we do have 3. One in Lexington County, an accident on Bush River Road at St. Andrews Road has been reportedly making traffic move pretty slowly through there. And then 2 here in Richland County. We'll start with one on Clemson Road at Sparkleberry Lane, and a second being at Fernandina Road at Piney Grove Road.
Talk a little Carolina baseball here on this Thursday. The Gamecocks on their way to Gainesville to take on Florida. That series starts tomorrow night. Last night, Coach Kingston was on with Derek Scott Carolina calls. And we spent about half of yesterday's program talking Carolina baseball because Carolina had a nice win in the midweek against North Carolina up in Charlotte. It was 2-1, a pitcher's duel, and you didn't really use any of your big arms, so that was encouraging. As I told Elijah, if you had said South Carolina is going to beat North Carolina by 1 run on Tuesday night in Charlotte, I would have not at all been surprised by that outcome. I just would have thought it would have been, I said, like 6-5 or maybe even 9-8 or something like that. I would not have anticipated a 2-1. And we talked to Jack Veltri yesterday, and he was at the ball game, said the same thing. Just didn't see that. So it's encouraging. But at the same time, South Carolina also left 10 men on base and struck out 16 times.
2 themes of the season, I think, that we've kind of noticed as we're, past the halfway point, I guess, in conference play.
So we'll start with a couple of cuts here from Coach Kingston last night talking about these things. The first one you'll hear is, again, something that seems to be a common refrain, and that is scoring and what you've got to do to bring runners home when they're on base.
It just changes by guys being able to relax in those moments. The guys that right now are struggling statistically in those areas have historically been very good. And we talk with, you can start with our 2 big guys there that get us all going. We know who those are. Last year they were tremendous with runners in scoring position. This year it hasn't quite been the same. And so baseball's funny like that. Sometimes you can get in a rut and it takes a little longer to get out, and they're obviously working very hard to be the players and to be the run producers that we all know they are. And sometimes it just takes one good at bat and they start to feel better, and then it gets contagious. But I do know we do need to do a better job of putting the ball in play with 2 strikes. I know we need to probably be a little bit more aggressive so that we don't get into bad counts with runners in scoring position. I think some guys are a little bit too aggressive in those situations, some guys not aggressive enough, and it's always a case-by-case basis. But yeah, we're well aware that we need to do a better job there, because as I look at some of the stats of other teams that we're playing, if we were just even close to our batting average normally is what we need to be with runners in scoring position, and we might have 3-4 more wins easily. And so it's the difference between being really good and being elite, and it's something that, as you mentioned, we can't talk about it too much because then the thing becomes a bigger thing, but we just need to keep working every day until it turns.
I think I heard Mark knock on wood right there. Did you hear that?
The little,
Yeah.
like,
Is that was?
distant knocking.
Yeah. We talked about this a lot yesterday, too, whether it's a hypothetical situation or in some cases for Carolina, it's been an actual situation where you are getting runners on base with no one out and then 3 straight strikeouts, which is just a killer.
Happened the other night.
Yeah, and it does get into your head. Mark's right about that. Guys, and then guys press. And there isn't necessarily a magic formula for it, but we channeled Tommy Moody yesterday, and we talked about that a lot. One of the things that always got under Tommy's skin in the sport, not just about the Gamecocks, is you put the ball in play. You mentioned, errors. Again, I say it in the line score, RHE. Put the ball in play. Make somebody throw a ball in a pressure situation. Just field the ball. I mean, sometimes a guy's going to flub one. But if you don't put the ball in play, none of that matters. Absolutely none of that matters. And that's becoming, I think, a point of frustration. Is it correctable? Yeah, it is. And, again, Monty Lee is Carolina's hitting coach, and Monty's working with him on a regular basis to try to figure these things out. Mark is certainly a guy who's been a hitting coach himself, and as the head coach, is going to be heavily involved in this. But, what are those little tweaks that Monty is trying to get to? Because right now, a lot of people are saying it's not working the way you need it to for this program.
And he alluded a little bit to what you can adjust, and maybe that's plate approach. This team has, we've talked about it all season long with them. They draw more walks than almost anybody in the country. Maybe that plate approach, when you get a couple of guys on base, needs to maybe be more aggressive instead of working counts and getting yourself in bad counts. Like, Mark said that they've been prone to do, is to maybe sit back a little too much, get in some bad counts by the time, it's like if it's a 1-2 count, having to swing away at something and causing a strikeout, or being too aggressive, wanting to go up there and clear the bases as easy as possible by maybe swinging at the first thing you see. They've got to be able to strike a balance there somewhere. And I think that's going to be more individual individualized coaching than anything else. It's going to be really hard for certain players who maybe like someone like an Ethan Petrie who has a ton of power, who maybe if he wants to go up there and swing away, it might be more beneficial to him to maybe be aggressive on a first or second pitch than it would be for some other guys at the bottom of the order who aren't producing. But there's a balance that needs to be struck there, and I think that's one of the biggest issues they're trying to find right now or trying to fix is striking that plate approach balance whenever there are runners on scoring position.
Another interesting thing that's happening with this ball club is the role that Will Tippett plays, and we'll get into a comment that Mark had about that. And this, I'm just going to give you, for those who might have missed it yesterday, look, Will plays elite defense. There's zero question about that. But in conference games, Will Tippett, let me get to it here for you. In conference games, Will Tippett is hitting .065. Slugging percentage is .097. His OBP is 171. So you're looking and OPS now. That's slugging plus on base. That's really a metric that a lot more clubs are using relative to the old bat. I mean, batting average is still something you want to have, be a good number. But OBP, are you getting walks? Are you getting hit by pitches? Things like that. Again, 171 is just not good, and an OPS of less than 300 is just not good. But he also made one of his elite defensive gems the other night, and it certainly helped South Carolina. So on that note, here is Coach Kingston from last night's call-in show discussing Will Tippett's defense. And if you're wondering, why is he still in the lineup? Well, it's things like what Mark's going to tell you.
Tippett's in the lineup right now because he plays elite defense, both in terms of consistency and range. He's a leader out there on defense. He's kind of a nice centerpiece along with Cole Messina when they're both playing. He has 12 stolen bases, which is an elite number at this point in the season. So from a base running standpoint, from a defense standpoint, he's an elite player. The offense is not what he or I or what we want at this point, but it's not to the point where we think the negatives outweigh the positives in terms of his contribution to us winning games. So as long as we think he's doing more to help us win games, then we're going to continue to run him out there. And at some point, I think he'll start to swing the bat better. He works too hard not to. He's too athletic not to. Just hasn't happened yet, but it doesn't mean it won't happen in the future.
And I like what Mark says there, and he's not wrong about the steals. But again, I'm going to use conference play only as a guide here, and I know that's not completely fair because Carolina won these games in the non-con. Will Tippett was 11 for 11 in steals in the non-con. He's 1 for 2 in conference play because he's not getting on base to steal a base. Again, the OBP is not good. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't – I'm not here – listen, I'm not here to say, therefore, you must replace Will Tippett in the lineup. Again, next time we have Mark on, I'll ask him more about this, I promise. Where's that line between what he does for you defensively in saving runs relative to what he may be doing in costing you opportunities at the bottom of the lineup when you are getting guys on in front of him, but he's striking out? Again, in conference play, he's got 39 plate appearances, not ABs, 39 plate appearances. He struck out 15 times. So, I mean, and I'm not trying to be critical here. I'm giving you fact, and I'm telling you what when those of you are looking at it, they've got good baseball players down there. But there's a couple of guys at the bottom of the order that are not giving you production. Mm-hmm. And the other guys know that. So either they've got to find a way, your players, to make an adjustment against opposing pitching, or you're going to have to put somebody else in there against opposing pitching to shake it up a little bit. And they've tried that. They've given Tippett a couple of days off. But I think Mark's right, Elijah. I think, again, you said it, a conundrum. He plays too good at defense. They don't have anybody else that comes close to his defense, and that matters at shortstop. This isn't a left fielder.
Yeah, that's where we're really going to find out what is being valued, I guess, when it comes to building lineups and putting guys out in the field, because he has been an absolute minus so far this year in the batting order, but this is where the tough balance has to be struck.
More from Coach, your phone calls as the postgame show continues. 11 minutes in front of 5 o'clock here on a Thursday afternoon. The Masters is underway. Speaking of sports in Georgia, don't want to tell you how badly the Braves got beat today.
I just saw the score earlier. A lot to not a lot.
Yeah, it was bad.
Which I guess translates to 16-4. If it's still that.
Well, you just said you weren't going to say it. Or did I say I wasn't going to?
You said you weren't going to say it. I never said I wasn't going to say it.
Alan Winans got the start today. This is where Spencer would have started again. And Alan Winans did not make the club. He started a few games last year for Atlanta. Remember, last year Atlanta had like 12, 13, 14 guys make a start because of some injuries. Winans was decent last year. And I say decent. But today the Braves didn't have it offensively either. But, yeah, 16-4. He gave up, well, let's put it this way. His ERA today, this is his first Major League appearance this season, and his ERA is 10.8.
That's not good.
It's not good.
Decent amount of points per game on the basketball floor, but not very good if that's your ERA.
No, that's actually a really bad ERA. It's actually an atrocious, awful, scary, gross ERA.
Not one to show.
If your ERA is over 5, I worry about you. When it's over 4, I'm like, really?
If it's over 5, then there's some other things you maybe can look at to see if there's some room for positive regression. But
if it's double where it should be.
Yeah.
That's
another good way of evaluating.
Yeah. There you go. Ernest wants to weigh in on some of what's going on with Carolina baseball. Hey, Ernest, how are you, bud?
Hey, Jay, as you know, I've been a Carolina baseball fan for a long time. Like when I called you from Hawaii, if you remember that, during the college roots. Okay, here's what I see that's going on with Carolina college baseball as far as us hitting. And I'm going to use a couple examples. First of all, there's different ways to hit the ball. You either hit under the ball, straight on the ball, or on top of the ball. Carolina has always been a team that hits underneath or straight on. In other words, we power hit to swing for the fences. We need to learn to play small ball in our hitting, not stealing bases, but in our hitting. A good coach that you can go back and look at, always been in College World Series, Augie Guerrera. He used to tear people up because he'd say, hey, swing down and hard, which means you're hitting the ball on top, so it goes down in the infield, bounces over the infielder's head, reaches the outfield for a base hit. Now, the reason he's keeping Will Tippett in there, like you said, his defense. But look at your lineup. If your top 3 are getting on base 75% of the time and your bottom 3 in your lineup are only getting on base 15% of the time, you don't need to take the people out of the lineup. Just shake up your lineup a little bit, and that maybe help too.
Yeah, good call, Ernest. And I think that's the next step. And we mentioned that yesterday with Jack. We talked about it with Derek earlier in the week. Mark and Monty did make some changes to the order. They didn't change the personnel necessarily, but just moved a few guys around after Game 2 in Oxford, where, again, if you only see a score, you're like, ugh. But, again, it was like the 8th inning. Ole Miss just blew up that day. Other than that, it was a pretty good series for Carolina, even though they dropped it. But they made some changes, and it helped. You're probably going to have to do that again. But like I say, if it's Will Tippett, he's hitting 9th. I mean, if you move him to 8, you move him to – I mean, I don't think you can have Will Tippett hit 7th.
Too high in the order.
Yeah.
You'll run into the same stuff.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When the bottom of your order is so unreliable, it doesn't matter how many of the early guys get on base unless they're hitting him out of the park or hitting for triples.
Yeah.
Right? And then maybe, if you're not striking out, then, maybe you can bring some additional runs home. But if the bottom of your order is this unreliable, it doesn't matter if Will Tippett's hitting 7th, 8th, 9th. If you broke some baseball rules and added a couple more spots, made him hit 11th or 12th, it's not going to matter because – look, he's not the only one at the bottom of the order that's not helping out in terms of hitting, too.
Right.
Dylan Brewer has struggled mightily since conference play began. He's at 205.
You hope his big hit the other night kind of gets him going.
And I love his swing. I think he's got probably one of the prettiest swings on this team, and I think that's gives me hope that number will go up a little bit. His batting average on balls and play is a little better than someone like Will Tippett's, too, where I think, there might be some positive regression going on there as well. You hope Blake Jackson can get together too. He's played all types of places in the order, but no matter where you've put him, he's still in conference play. He's at 154. So it really almost at a certain point doesn't matter if you strategically by the numbers made a lineup or you Billy Martined it. It might not matter if you just they'll hit probably in the same spot. I guess the same efficiency as they would elsewhere.
Yeah, you've got a pretty nice sample size now too.
Yeah.
You know, you're starting to get to that point as you're past the halfway point of the regular season
Against
overall.
good pitching.
And this weekend you'll be at the halfway point of the conference slate. You know, as our good friend Michael Haney used to say, you are who you are now. How do you deal with it? And again, Ernest, I don't disagree with you with your baseball theories at all. One of the things we discussed yesterday is, you know, the sport in general, not South Carolina baseball, not just Mark Kingston and his approach. The sport in general has gone to, you know, hitting home runs and the launch angle and getting it out and getting it up.
Devaluing certain outs.
Yeah. And that's sort of an evolution of baseball. There may be a guy at some point that brings it back. We shall see. Sean Elliott spoke. Joe DiCamillo spoke. Get you some sound from those Gamecock assistants, headlines of today, and updates from the Masters. Coming up.
From the WIS Traffic Center, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to report to you that are causing delays on the roadways here In the Midlands, we'll go ahead and start with a few that have been reported here in Richland County. One on Trentham Road at 2 Notch Road that's recently been reported. Another on I-77 at US 21 near exit 24. An object on the roadway is causing some traffic backup on I-126 westbound at Hugh G. Street. And then another accident's been reported on Fernandina Road at Piney Grove Road and one on Clemson Road at Sparkleberry Lane. We also have a couple in Lexington County at Bush River Road at St. Andrews Road and on Pond Branch Road near Reedy O. Smith Road.
It is 5 o'clock news time. Welcome back in. It's also the final hour of the Postgame Show on this Thursday. Along with Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Thank you so much for being with us. Busy today, talking a lot of Masters, some Gamecock baseball, the Kentucky search, and I got some Gamecock football notes to get you coming up in just a little bit. Let's start with the Masters, which is underway after a little more than a 2-hour delay this morning. And again, I always tell you, if you want to know what the weather's like in Augusta, you can usually just look outside here in Columbia and get a pretty good gauge of it. Maybe about an hour behind, because just like it's an hour away. But,
the same way we got that rain about an hour after they did.
But give or take, it's about the same. It is now nice over there. I've got it on here. A little blustery. Bryson DeChambeau is the leader so far at 7 under par. He is done for the day.
Fan favorite.
Yeah. I'm not supposed to editorialize during the news.
I want to make you.
I'm not a fan.
Honestly, how many people that are golf fans really will stick their neck out and be like, you know what? I really like Bryson DeChambeau. I'm a Bryson DeChambeau fan. I don't know many.
The only live guy I'll pull for, like, earnestly is John Rahm now. And I was really it kind of hurt me that John Rahm left, but I like John Rahm. So I'm not this week. I'm not really pulling for him. I just won't pull against him. Like, I pull against Patrick Reed.
A lot of people pull against Patrick Reed
I mean,
as well.
He's my number one villain in golf, and it's Patrick Reed. And if y'all can't see me unless you're watching on YouTube right now, like, Patrick Reed is way up here, and then other golf villains are like down here somewhere.
He's in a tier of his own.
Oh,
Patrick
it's not
Reed.
a tier. There's like tier 1. And then tier 2, 3, 4, and 5 are like kind of empty. And then there's tier 6. It is kind of spread out.
And then there's Bryson DeChambeau.
There's Bryson. Yeah, you know what? I kind of perked up a little bit yesterday on Bubba Watson, because I'm watching his daughter make some long putts in the par 3. I was like, that's kind of cool. Brooks Koepka had his baby out there. I was like, man, you're making me feel like I need to like Brooks Koepka. Not supposed to do that to me, golf.
Hey, unlikable people have children.
Oh, I'm sure they do. But I'm a sucker.
You're a softie.
I am. Except for Reed.
no amount of childbearing or anything.
I'm a concrete porcupine when it comes to Patrick Reed, my man. Danny Willett and Matt Fitzpatrick of England are at 4 under par. Fitzpatrick is still on the course. He is on 14. Scotty Scheffler of the United States is also at 4 under par. Just 2 at 3 under right now. Ryan Fox of Australia, he's done. Will Zalatoris of the United States is at -3 through 14 holes. Got a big group at 2 under par that includes Cam Smith, Wyndon Clark, and Victor Hovland. An even larger group at 1 under par that includes Lucas Glover, Tony Finau, Joaquin Niemann of the LIV Tour, who was given an exemption by Augusta National to play in the Masters. Very interesting. Rory McIlroy, Siwoo Kim, and Tiger Woods, the guy from California who played at Stanford and now lives in Florida. Is also at 1 under, just through 3. Tiger teeing off late. I don't know. Again, the latest tee times, everybody's on the course now, but the latest tee times today ended up going off at 4:30. Supposed to go off about, again, 2:15, 2:30, where they would have finished. So I don't know if some of these guys that teed off at 4:30 are going to make it. It's going to be tight. I doubt it. You can play up until probably 8, 7:45 before it gets too shadowy.
Yeah.
Augusta National, for all the things they do, they have not yet worked out a deal with the sun to have it just stop momentarily.
We did talk about this week because of the eclipse. The sun is a pretty influential, powerful.
Yeah, does its own thing.
And you putting your hand over it and maybe squinting a little bit will not change how bright it gets. Still, do not look at the sun.
Still laughing at that guy the other day. I don't know who he was. There was a guy outside our building here, and I hope he's okay. But there was a guy, y'all, outside of our building, and he put his hand over his eyes, all 4 fingers, right? And then he tried to make a little slit, like with one finger. We could see him doing it. And I was like, dude, that ain't gonna work.
Nope.
You're not gonna see the moon eclipsing the sun. You are going to ruin your eyesight, though.
That quite literally will have zero impact. You're doing absolutely nothing other than just putting your hand on your face.
You're blinding yourself. Yes, you're blinding yourself. Just not quite as quickly. That's all you're doing.
You're blinding yourself, but like telling people that you did something or tried to.
But let me see a couple others real quick for you. Sergio Garcia, John Rahm, Spanish legends and Masters champions both at even par. Patrick Reed's at even par. Keegan Bradley, Adam Scott, Cam Young, all at even. A big, giant group at even par. And Tommy Fleetwood is apparently so good, they've got him on the leaderboard twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He cloned himself.
It's the hair.
Mid-round.
It's the hair.
Which I can always appreciate.
Yeah, he's got your hair.
Yeah.
Y'all are twins like that. So there you go. That's a little look at what's going on right now at Augusta National. To continue our integrated media headlines of the day, we know a lot more now about Shohei Ohtani's former interpreter and, dare I say, former friend, Ippei Mizuhara. The feds have gotten him now and say that he did indeed steal more than $16 million from Ohtani to pay off gambling debts to an illegal bookmaker in California. The feds, according to the Associated Press, filed a complaint accusing Mizuhara of bank fraud, which can carry a maximum fine of up to $1 million. You ain't getting that from Shohei. Or up to 30 years in prison. And said U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada, who is handling this case today in a news conference, quote, "I want to emphasize this point. Mr. Ohtani is considered a victim in this case." There were a lot of people being kind of crappy towards Shohei Ohtani, saying using this dude as a front, making him take the fall. Listen, I've said this before. The feds, by the time the feds do something like this, like they did a couple of weeks ago, their mountain of evidence is already in front of them. They don't go out on a whim. Look, sometimes they may swing and miss, but it's rare. Their batting average is quite good. Mr. Estrada said there was no evidence that Ohtani had any knowledge of Mizuhara's gambling activity or the use of his bank account to pay his debts. Estrada says investigators combed through years of text messages between the two and found no discussion of gambling. Quote, Mr. Mizuhara used and abused that position of trust in order to plunder Mr. Ohtani's bank account to the tune of over $16 million. In the complaint, Mr. Ohtani is referred to as professional baseball player, which is true. It's a fact.
That he is.
Major League Baseball has also issued a comment today, quote, given the information disclosed and other information we have already collected, we will wait until resolution of the criminal proceeding to determine whether further investigation is warranted. There was one apparent exchange between Mizuhara and the bookmaker that said, I'm terrible at this sports betting thing, huh? Any chance you can bump me again? As you know, you don't have to worry about me not paying. Ouch.
Yikes.
Ouch. Well, there's others. I'm not going to get into all of it, but dude was taking full advantage of what's up.
What's so odd, though, is that they still felt the need, Shohei Ohtani and other representatives felt the need to change the story. If that was the truth all along, why don't you lead off with, "Hey, I've been robbed blind"?
That's a fair question. I think maybe he didn't know the scope of it, and maybe he was thinking that it's like. Again, I don't know. So you ask, I'm speculating like a lot of people do. My gut, when I've thought about this before, says, well, I don't know, like maybe he thought it was a couple $1,000, and he's like, I'm just going to cover for him, or like, oh yeah, it's all good, And then you realize, oh crap, $16 million. By the way, the day the news broke last month, this was a text exchange between Mizuhara, the interpreter, and the bookmaker in L.A. Mizuhara texted, asking if he, the bookmaker, had seen the media reports. The reply, yes, but that's all BS. Obviously, you didn't steal from him. I understand it's a cover job. I totally get it. The reply, via text, I might add. Technically, I did steal from him. It's all over for me.
Oh. Yep. I mean, you don't have to look far outside of the text messages for that type of proof. Technically, I did.
I don't know why you're texting that, but you did.
It sounds like the bookie tried to help him, tried to throw him a softball there.
Obvious. And how does the bookie know? Obviously, you didn't steal from him. No, yeah, actually, I kind of did. So anyway, the federal government of the United States of America says Shohei Ohtani is a victim. And I'm not here to take up for him, but what else is MLB going to look into?
At that point. No.
I mean, if the feds are saying we consider him a victim, and, oh, by the way, we've looked at it, what else? I mean, Major League Baseball is going to be doing what?
You hit the retweet button and move on and keep your biggest star in the game.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't...
Pretty easy solution.
So I don't know, but anyway, there you go. So Shohei, good luck to you, bud. Congratulations to Zach Edey of Purdue as we continue our integrated media headlines. His second straight Wooden Award as the top player in college basketball. Why is he not a lottery pick?
Because he's probably a little too slow laterally on defense and he can't shoot threes.
Okay.
But that is it. I mean, he is a really good back-to-his-basket post player who's got a really good touch on a jump hook, and he rebounds the ball really well, and you can't teach being 7'4". But I think what UConn did in terms of how they attacked him is how every team in the NBA would attack him. He plays heavy drop coverage and sometimes doesn't have, I guess, that lateral quickness to cover extra space whenever you're playing against quick guards with centers who do screen really well.
By the way, he's the first repeat winner in more than 40 years. Yeah, imagine. I see you shaking your head, nodding your head knowingly. You know who the last guy was?
That'd be Ralph Sampson.
Ralph Sampson. That's crazy that we haven't had somebody win back-to-backs. We've had some good players in this sport. Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, Jamal Mashburn.
Yeah,
Ray Allen, Grant Hill.
Only like 3 players since Ralph Sampson won the Wooden and came back.
Yeah. And Patrick Ewing even. Did Ewing win one?
I think Ewing won one. I want to say Ewing won one.
82, 83. So 83, I think Hakeem might have played in 84 as well. I think he got out in 84. I don't know if Hakeem got one or not.
They would battle each other for him.
But, or even like Len Bias, who was amazing.
Yep.
But Zach Edey becomes the first guy in college basketball, on the men's side at least, since the early 80s. The great Ralph Sampson, who was a dominant force in college basketball.
And just the absolute crazy thing about that too is that, we didn't even have a Wooden Award player come back to play college basketball again since from that time that he won. Ralph Sampson won his first, to Tyler Hansbrough coming back after winning it in 07-08. And then after that, it happened with Oscar Tshiebwe and now Zach Edey. So we went from having do the math there, from 1980 to 2007, where no one even came back to school after winning it.
Right.
To now, we've had the last 2 Wooden Award winners return for a second year.
Yeah, 25 years, give or take. Well, and finally, and I'm not going to say much about this other than give you this as fact from the news. O.J. Simpson died today. He was 76 years old. His family announced on O.J.'s Twitter account, quote, on April 10th, our father, Orenthal Simpson, succumbed to his battle with cancer. He was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. During this time of transition, his family asks that you please respect their wishes for privacy and grace. OJ was 76. We all know the story. Again, he was truly one of the greatest running backs to ever play the sport, became a Hollywood icon, was acquitted of murder, was found liable of those murders in a civil trial, went to jail for putting a gun to a dude's head over some memorabilia.
Can't do that.
Got out of jail, and by and large, without, I guess, a couple of things here or there, but I got no, there will be no editorializing. O.J. Simpson was 76. That's our Integrated Media headlines of the day, brought to you by Integrated and the guys at Pro Swing. 803-948-8327 for all of your home theater needs and so much more. Call my good friends at Integrated Media. I promise you, you'll be glad you did. Some Gamecock spring football talk. Assistant coach Sean Elliott and Joe DeCamillis speaking. We'll give you that as the postgame show continues. Hey, it's 80 degrees outside in Columbia right now, and it's getting to be hot for many, many months to come, and all across the Midlands of South Carolina for years. AAA Heating and Air has been your year-round ally against the changing weather. If it's time for something new in your house to keep you and your family comfortable, start with a free replacement. AAA will set the tone for quality and affordability. All you need to do to get that free quote is log on to call AAAtoday.com. That's call AAAtoday.com. Punch in a few bits of info, and Roy and Dana got an algorithm thing. I don't know how they do it, but they do it because they know what's up. And they'll let you know what your system will cost. They have done great work at my house to keep my family nice and happy. But don't just take my word for it. Again, head over to their website for an instant quote. See the difference for yourself. Or you can call them up, 803-677-1500. Call AAAtoday.com. Stay comfortable all the time with AAA Heating and Air. Welcome back into the postgame show on this Thursday. Jay and Elijah with you. My friend Lane Wofford. Thank you, Lane. Y'all remember Lane? Lane works for Ryan now. For? Yeah, both. Sent me this. Christian Leitner? Like, I'm Ron Burgundy? Question mark.
I'm Ron Burgundy.
Christian Leitner did win in 92. But, yeah, no, the last back-to-back, again, was Ralph. Michael Jordan won it one time.
A lot of one-time winners. There are not many in the history of the award.
Yeah.
There are not many that actually went on to win.
Where did Michael Jordan play? NC State?
I thought he was a Wake Forest guy.
No, this says North Carolina. St. John's had back-to-back winners, just not the same guy. And Duke had back-to-back winners, but not the same guy. Chris Mullen in 85, Walter Berry in 86. Walter Berry is a forgotten great. God, the Big East was so good in the 80s, man.
That's prime Big East right there.
Oh, my gosh.
Bring it back.
Just so good. Lionel Simmons, the L Train, man, 1990. Duke had Shane Battier and Jay Williams win it, 01-02. That's pretty cool. Yeah, but no, back-to-backs. Zach Edey is the latest since
And it's really funny.
Ralph.
On the women's side, there have been 6 back-to-back winners. They only started giving that award out in 2003, 2004. And they've had 6 back-to-back winners. If you count Maya Moore, who won 2, but in 3 years, they have 7 players since 2003, 2004 that have won multiple wins.
Yeah. Carolina's got a couple. Yep. There's Aaliyah, Asia. Griner twice, Parker twice,
Brianna
Simone
Stewart.
Augustus. Yeah. Sabrina Iniescu. She can shoot.
Pretty well.
Yeah. Brianna Stewart. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, there you go.
You know who else won a Wooden Award?
Tell me.
Sean Elliott. 1988-89 with
did.
Arizona.
He did.
How about that for a segue?
that is
How
cool.
about that for a segue?
That just, you know what? We should stop the show right now.
I'm walking
At
out
that
of here.
point, that's right. Yeah, that is a mic drop. Sean Elliott did win the Wooden Award, and Sean Elliott spoke today at after Carolina football practice. It's crazy how these kind of things go. I guess it's a different guy, but no, Sean, of course, back in Columbia as run game coordinator, working with the tight ends as well, but helping out with a lot of facets of the offense. Here's some of his thoughts as we get closer to the spring game.
Playing a couple for you. First, I saw Camden High was in here to view practice today. Was that on your invitation? They just come in?
No, they do an annual event and bring the entire team. That the ones that work hard over there and do the right things, they bring the team over here to see a practice every year. It's been a tradition now, I think, for about 6 or 7 years, from what I understand. They continue to do a lot of that stuff. We got a Camden guy here on the team, so he practiced a little bit harder. Camden coach over here, so I could maybe coach a little bit harder, but it's good to see those guys out.
Sure. And then, as your title as run game coordinator, I know you work with tight ends a lot, but how much do you actually work with the O-line in that role as run game coordinator, and how do you bounce ideas off of Dowell when you're coming up with a plan for the year?
Yeah, so, my interaction with the offensive line is more through the walkthroughs, and as we put in schemes right there, I'm here to just kind of use my knowledge to tell them how I see this thing works, how I see it working with the tight ends and the offensive line and the backs, and I got to take all those puzzle pieces and kind of put it together so they all understand, what happens at this point, why we have a kick out block here, why you follow a second puller on a pin and pull, and just things of that. But specific work as far as in a team segment or individual combo drills with the offensive line, I'm not doing a lot of that. I got to coach these tight ends and make them the best group out there, and that's my number one concern. So it's a balance, but I do sit in there with Lonnie and Dow, and we bounce things off each other and try to formulate a good plan and get it done.
Sean, earlier this spring, I don't know if it was Josh, maybe there's a couple other players, they talked about this tight end room in particular, talking about from an identity standpoint, which obviously we have months to go until we get to the season, but being more physical this year. What has that process been like this? Again, I know it's so early on. Is that something that you want to see from this room? What can we kind of expect the South Carolina tight end room to look like this season?
Well, just from my standpoint, anybody that I coach, I want them to be fighters. I want them to be tough. With no back down. And what we've done in that room this spring, and just what are we on practice 11 maybe? What is it? I'm not sure. 10 or 11? I don't even know. They have gotten more physical. And when you think of the physical nature, that can be on the perimeter and blocking for screens. That could be lining up inside in a split flow zone concept, backside kicking out a big defensive end that's crashing down. I try to tell these guys they got to put their face in the fan each and every rep. And to kind of describe that's kind of taking the fan right there and just letting it just blister you, And that's the mentality I want these guys to have. I want them to play with no fear, a face in the fan mentality where there's no back down. They understand what's coming at them. It's going to be tough. It's going to be physical, but that's what they live for. I was in the meeting yesterday, and we had a little shoulder bruise because we did a great job on a split flow cut block coming down the line. And he was like, yeah, my shoulder is sore. I was like, well, God, that's what football's based upon, I was like, you shouldn't even play the game if you're not. We know what we're getting into. We're getting into this to be physical. We're going to have bumps. We're going to have bruises. We're going to be sore. We're going to ache. We're going to hurt. And you got to play through all that. But you got to be fearless. And I said, listen, my shoulder hurts, but I'm going to go out there and do it. And they're going to do it. And we've done a good job, I think, in establishing more of a physical mentality in that room.
Just want to see your thoughts on Josh Simon and what you've seen out of him these first 10 practices or whatever it is.
Josh is one of those tight ends that can play out there on the perimeter. You can utilize him in the throw game. You can bring him in there. He's a willing blocker. And that was one of the things that I had a little bit of concern for because they didn't have a whole lot of concepts about coming in there and being physical in there. But Josh has done a nice job this spring of establishing his run concepts, doing his job in the run game, becoming a physical player, understanding why he's doing it, and then also out there on the perimeter. But he's going to be a special player for us. I think he can utilize his talents out there with his hands, his feet, his knowledge on the perimeter, making plays. And then also we can bring him in the box, and he's going to be able to handle backside defensive ends, inside linebackers. Shoot, you may even see him zoning up on 3 techniques or noses. But I like Josh, and I like everything he brings to the table. I've actually played against Josh. Josh was at Western Kentucky, and we played him in a bowl game, and we kicked his ass there. I told him he had to get a lot tougher, and he's gotten a lot tougher.
Hey, Sean, got 2 for you. First off, kind of going off that, what's it been like working with Brady Hunt so far?
Man, I love Brady Hunt. He's another guy we've played in a bowl game. He played him at Ball State when he was a freshman at Ball State. I love Brady. He's a guy that comes to work every single day. When you have a meeting, I mean, he's all business. He understands concepts. He's got great intelligence. He's not going to wow you with his athleticism. He's a true, almost a prototypical tight end, big, strong guy, inline blocker. But I love everything about him. Football is important to him, Brady. He loves the game. He loves what it can do for him. And he gives us everything he has every single rep. I haven't had I don't know if I've said a negative thing about Brady all year, because he does a nice job in trying to get it right, and he typically gets it right.
Good stuff from Sean Elliott. Brutal honesty is one of Sean's calling cards. I love it.
He is a football guy, if I've ever seen a football guy. And I'm now convinced the man eats rusty nails for breakfast.
He might.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah. It's good to have him back in Columbia. It's good to have him back on this staff. I love that David asked him about, Camden High and being a local guy and how much he loves this program. But, again, brutal honesty. I love it.
The Josh Simon, that's how you know
That's
he's
great,
not
man.
BSing you, too.
Yeah.
I mean, if he is calling Josh Simon a willing blocker, he's not doing it because he's just trying to make sure that, good things are being said about Josh. I think, if he wasn't a willing blocker, I think this is if he's willing to remind you that he kicked his ass in college coaching at Georgia State, I'm sure he would love to remind you that he's getting his ass kicked in practice. So the fact that he divulged that information, I believe him when he's talking about Josh Simon's willingness as a blocker.
I love it. Coming up, drive around the SEC, get you ready for the baseball weekend. A departure from one of the SEC's best basketball programs, too. This is the Postgame Show.
From the WIS Traffic Center, I'm Elijah Campbell with a couple accidents to report too that are causing some delays on the roadways this afternoon. We'll start here in Richland County where we have a few. An accident on Alpine Road at US 1 at Two Notch Road is causing some traffic backup. One on Clemson Road at Hardscrabble Road has been an issue for about the last hour and a half or so. An object on the roadway is causing some traffic backup on I-126 westbound at Hugh G. Street. And then one at I-77 at US 21 near exit 24, along with one at Trenholm Road at Two Notch Road, are also causing issue here in Richland County. In Lexington County, we have two to report, one on Pond Branch Road near Reedy O. Smith Road, and lastly, we have one that's just coming in on Zimmelcrest Drive near Bush River Road.
It is Drive Around the SEC time on this Thursday. Jay and Elijah back with you. We'll start with baseball. Just one Wednesday night game in conference play last night. Actually, yesterday afternoon. I think we had this as a final, didn't we, yesterday? But there was no other games last night. Arkansas beat San Jose State 8-2. Again, Arkansas basically paid San Jose State to come in for a two-game midweek series.
A midweek series.
Yeah.
We have midweek games, but not oftentimes do we have the midweek series.
Arkansas, I guess, just wanted to win two games at home in the midweek. So they brought in San Jose State, and they won both games.
Did what they're supposed to do.
There you go.
You can't say that about a lot of teams that had midweek games in the SEC this past few days.
I do want to find out what San Jose State got paid to fly over from San Jose. I guess that's where they are.
It would be very misleading if it weren't. That I would have more questions.
Well, let's face it, man. The San Francisco 49ers play in Santa Clara, which is near San Jose.
And the New York Jets and New York Giants don't play in New York.
Haven't in a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. Man, what are you going to do?
So New York City can't tout their victories. If we're being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, the parades have to run across the bridge.
They absolutely should. Yeah. If they should be held where it's hosted. How about that?
That's fair. I do know this. The University of Georgia and the University of Missouri are in their respective states, and they will play baseball tonight. Game one of a three-game set in Athens, and Kentucky is at Auburn. That one, let's see, starts at 7:30 tonight. Those are the only two that are Thursday through Saturday series. The rest of the action this weekend, Carolina, of course, is at Florida, Arkansas at Alabama, Vandy at A&M. Egg Bowl baseball battle. State is at Ole Miss. LSU at Tennessee. That could get interesting for LSU. LSU's 3-9, y'all.
Yeah, if they drop 2 or 3, that puts them at what, 4-11.
Yeah, Tennessee's good. They're 7-5. Tennessee's scuffled a little bit too, in a relative sense. But that's an interesting one. Vandy A&M. Vandy's kind of gotten it going after the sweep in Columbia. They've only lost once. Otherwise, they're 8-4.
Turning point for them.
Yeah, I think so. A&M sitting at 8-4 as well. But Arkansas and Kentucky are rolling along at 11-1 atop each division in the Southeastern Conference. Some other notes for you around the SEC. Texas' Samaje Burrell has been identified as an additional driver in a crash that involved Tavondre Sweat. Sweat, of course, is on his way to the National Football League this season as one of the best defensive linemen in the game. Steve Sarkisian says Burrell has been, quote, we're aware that, let me put it this way, we're aware of the situation involving Samaje Burrell and have suspended him indefinitely from all team activities for conduct detrimental to the program. Police say Sweat was driving a Bronco when he was hit from behind, causing him to lose control, veer off onto a service road, and roll the car onto its side. When police responded at 4:41 a.m. the morning of the incident, the other driver had left the scene. That driver, again, has now been identified as Longhorn linebacker Samaje Burrell. So Indefinitely suspended. What does that mean?
Yeah,
This is pretty serious stuff, but he'll play.
At some point.
He'll play.
Well, it depends how good he is. Also,
look, I'm not. This is going to sound sanctimonious. Maybe I mean it to. Maybe I don't. I really don't. I suppose. But this is one of those situations. Being a full scholarship athlete at any school, like, is a privilege, not a right. And I just, there seems to be a lot of entitlement sometimes from a lot of guys these days. And a coach just, we'll suspend him. Oh, okay, you're suspending him in April.
not going to miss any games.
Yeah, I mean,
games aren't played in April.
Okay, and then you'll say, well, he was a little behind because he missed spring ball, and then it's okay, so he won't start in your game against
Rice.
Yeah, or whoever.
But he comes into the second half, and then it's it's whatever.
We'll see. We'll see what happens with that one. Tennessee basketball is losing one of its better players to the portal. Jonas Adu he's entered the portal and the draft. And this is a solid player, man.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to go back and find. I had his numbers pulled up. Well, you know what? I just closed it out.
Had kind of a breakout year, honestly.
But he plays a lot. He plays about 25 minutes a game.
And I think, I saw a really good point that someone made earlier today where they're talking about, maybe the straw that broke the camel's back for him was getting sat in the Elite Eight the entire second half against Purdue because Zach Edey was just giving him the business. There's nothing he could do. And Tobe Awaka and JP Estrella were just playing better in that spot. His scoring average went from 5.1 points per game last season to 11.4 this season. And with rebounding, that went from 4.9 to 7.3, and he only, played about 6 more minutes per game than he did last year. So he still only played about 24 minutes, but was still highly productive in that time. And if you prorated his numbers per 40 minutes, he's scoring 18 points and grabbing 12 rebounds and blocking 3 shots a game. So if he's able to step out, shoot some jumpers, be able to show that he can be a 3-point threat to a degree, I think he's good enough defensively to find himself on a roster.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that you do both, and he's not alone anymore. That guys that are putting their name in the portal and the draft at the same time.
It's a luxury that the NBA has, the NFL does not.
But this is he's a big kid, man. I mean, he's definitely got an NBA body, right? I mean, what 6'11", 240. Look, you were probably gonna. Well, I'm not saying you're probably gonna lose him anyway, but as you mentioned, there might have been a little friction late. But chances are pretty good that he was going to put his name into the draft regardless, whether he comes back to Knoxville or not. And he might be told, yeah, come on. The question is, again, when you're a second-round guy, the money is so much different. Yeah. How much can you improve your stock if you come back? Where are those unknowns? Like, can you do it a little bit? Sometimes it's just time to go, or even be a free agent. I'd like to see the NBA add around. The 2-round thing, I don't know if it'd help them or not, but why not?
If you add more G League spots, because here's the thing, like the value in the draft, quick side here, I was listening to LeBron James and JJ Redick's podcast they do, and he said, the NBA is the teams that draft bad draft solely on potential. And that's why you see a lot of the same teams drafting in the lottery all the time. The smart teams that are usually picking from like 15 to 30 are usually taking the guys that are really good right now. Yeah. And a lot of those guys, that's where a lot of the value is later in the draft. And Jonas Adu is a serviceable player right now. He doesn't have this potential that someone that is like Donovan Clingan, right? But he's someone who could be serviceable right now. And I think that's exactly what the grade is that he's going to be looking for, is if he can improve his stock. I don't think he can. I think even if he does develop a 3-point shot, unless he becomes, Karl Anthony Towns, he's late first.
Yeah. But he can play.
First. Early second, late second.
I mean, listen, Tennessee was good. He was certainly a big part of it. So there's reasons to think that he might be a pro next season. That's our drive around the SEC, brought to you by Herndon Chevy, your hometown Chevy dealer. Stop by the showroom and see why Herndon makes you smile. I'll give you a couple of minutes from what Gamecock special teams coordinator Joe DeCamillis had to say as we're 2/3 of the way through spring ball. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Welcome back into the final few minutes of the postgame show on this Thursday. Before that, you hear a couple of minutes from Gamecock special teams coordinator and associate head coach Joe DeCamillis. Update from the Masters. Again, Bryson DeChambeau has been in the clubhouse for a while with a 65 today, 7 under par. Scotty Scheffler, who is one of the betting favorites along with Rory McIlroy, is at 6 under. Scotty is playing 17. England's Danny Willett has also been in the clubhouse for a bit at a 4 under 68. Ryan Fox of Australia is done at 3 under. Will Zalatoris is on 18 at 3 under. A couple other big names for you. Rory is on 17 at 2 under. Wyndham Clark is at 2 under, playing 15. Tommy Fleetwood is at even par. Max Homa 2 under. Lucas Glover 1 under. Tony Finau 1 under. John Rahm is at 1 under. Victor Hovland, man, a big group. I'm trying to find where Tiger is right now. Tiger is at even par. He's playing 7. So there you go. There's a couple of Dustin Johnson is, hang on, where's DJ? Dustin is 1 over.
Ooh.
He is playing the 5th. So plenty of time for the 2020 champion.
That's right.
Plenty of time. He'll stand out in history, by the way. Speaking of which, real quick, a lot of people have been saying because they have the women's amateur at Augusta National now, are there plans for a women's professional, like 4-day event as opposed to just a 2-day event? And really only 1 day of official golf. 1 day is a practice round. 1 day is an official round for the women's amateur. And Fred Ridley said, it's not that we don't want to. I'm paraphrasing. He's like, not that we don't want to. We don't have any room on our calendar. Our club is only open for about half the year. Our members use our club. They don't open in the summer because, newsflash, it's really hot. They open back up in the fall a little bit, but he says the fall does not accommodate an event the way they would like it to, whether that means the colors or the sunlight or a host of things. And there's just not logistically a place where they could put another tournament of any kind. They've been asked about other tournaments, I think, in the past. And they're like, we got our one, and we're happy we can do this other one a little, in some way. But I think they close, man, from like middle of May until after Labor Day. Like, you can't play golf over there.
That's a reverse beach off season.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's hot.
It does get very hot around here.
Yeah, and they're like, we don't play in the heat. We play when it's a little nicer in Augusta, Georgia. Joe DeCamillis spoke today along with Sean Elliott. Joe D coming in as a new coach as well, replacing Pete Limbo. And we know what Shane Beamer thinks of special teams. Here's a couple of minutes of how Coach DeCamillis is viewing his role with Carolina football.
Well, just want to say what a privilege it's been here so far as just the way things have gone. Coach Beamer's done a great job of setting a culture, and I think our players have bought into it too. Our strength coach has done a great job of giving us the players the capacity to work, and they are not afraid of hard work. I can tell you that. So that's part of the biggest positive for me right now. That's for sure. And seeing this whole operation the way it's worked. It's been a great experience so far.
Coach, just curious to hear your thoughts on how the place kicker battle has gone with Herrera and some of those other guys.
Yeah, unfortunately with Alex, he ended up getting a little bit of a heel injury right before we started. So he's been limited in quite a few practices early on. Ended up hitting some balls today, which is good to see. So it's been a little bit of a struggle for him so far. But the other guys, I tell you, Joyce has done a good job for us. Some of the guys that have been here in the past, we've had a good competition so far there. So it's good to see.
Speaking of that competition, Joe, you look at Mason Love, comes in with a lot of high school credentials, enlisted as a kicker and punter. Are you guys repping him at both? Do you like one spot better than the other?
Yeah, I think right now I would view him more as a kickoff man and a punter. That's how I'd view him right now. I'm not sure that, we want to put him in that position now to where he's a place kicker, but we'll see how it goes during the summer. We want to try to spoon feed him a little bit and get him going where he's positive right now, and he's had a really good spring so far as a punter and a kickoff man.
Joe, I had a chance to ask Shane this on Tuesday, but just from your perspective, obviously you're coming in here, you were hired to do a certain job, but at the same time, too, from a player standpoint, trying to figure out different terminology, trying to figure out your philosophy on everything. How has that process been in trying to bring in what you want to do and blend that in with what they've been able to do the last couple of years?
Well, I think the biggest thing is it's them understanding what we want done, the way we want it done. My practice and my practice tempo and the things I'm asking them to do is going to be different than what Pete did. That's just how it is. But they are acclimating very well. They are doing a good job of doing that. It's been fun with these kids. Like I said, the biggest thing is their hard work will get us to where we need to be. If they can keep that attitude going, we're going to be in great shape with these kids. I think the way they work, and I'm very pleased with where we're at. Now, am I pleased with everything that goes on in practice? Hell no, I'm not. But, we just got to keep things going in the right direction.
I would imagine you have a lot of different guys working at kick and punt return. Assuming that's the case, who have been some of those guys that have gotten a lot of work there?
Yeah, there's been a lot of guys. Vicari's been one of the guys that's been back there on punt return. Gage has been back there on punt return. We've had Kilgore back there on punt return. Those are 3 guys. Kickoff return, all those same guys. Peyton Mangren's been back there on kickoff return. So right now, the way we're running things is we really don't have a scout team, if that makes sense. When you get to the season, it's a scout team. What we've done is we break it up into 4 teams, and the whole spring, they're going to be working on each team, if that makes sense to you. So that means they're getting just as much work on punt return, punt, kickoff, and kickoff return all the way through. And it's just the way we've done it, and I think it's been good. I think it creates good competition, and they're running our ball. They're not worried about scout team looks and all that kind of stuff. They're running our ball, which I think is important teaching-wise.
That's Gamecock Special Teams Coordinator and Associate Head Coach Joe DeCamillis talking about that. The kick return, punt return aspect of things, people always want to know who that guy is, and I certainly understand why. Branching from that in a more big picture way, though, Elijah, we've already heard that college football is going to study what the XFL or UFL or USXFL is going to do with the kickoffs, and the NFL is going to adapt it now into the 2024 season. That kind of stuff's coming to college. I mean, all of a sudden, I think there's going to maybe be not a reimagining of the return game in college, but that you might start now, if you're a guy like Joe D and other special teams guys, to begin identifying what that could look like next year, 2025, because I think college is going to take this on.
I guarantee you he's going to be talking to his NFL colleagues a ton about what they're doing to try to get ahead of it, because I think that's where it's going. I think it's coming. I think that's just part of it. I mean, again, everything has to evolve, right? Evolve or die. Good stuff today. Thanks to Coach Bill McDonald and to Trip Eisenhower of the Golf Channel for joining us talking Masters. Do it all again tomorrow. More Carolina baseball for you too.